as soon as we get back to the venue, chaos breaks loose. Somebody gets thrown through a window and smashed, and the venue gets shut down, all these things. And then my poor brother played piano. So we're like, hey, try this. And like, we forced him into it at first. It felt like we were too metal for hardcore, and we were too hardcore for metal. And I just said, first one to climb the tree gets a free shirt. And then it was like a World War Z of people climbing this tree. One of those things where as soon as it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, shouldn't have said that. And we had a lot of success early on with this Meet the Week. The album did better than any of us thought it was going to do. And then I think we kind of got into this thing of like, once again, like, what do we do next?
Real quick before we start, I just wanted to mention that we do these podcast recordings live on stream. We stream every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. EST on Twitch. It's an opportunity for you guys to come hang out, interact, and ask your questions directly to all of our guests. We also have a Discord if you want to keep talking more about deathcore and metalcore, or simply to keep up with everything that we're doing, upcoming guests, and all that jazz. I'll leave links to both of these things in the description wherever you are watching or listening. And with that out of the way, please enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Brutality Podcast, episode 12. My name is Dom. We are joined, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Yan. What's going on?
I'm doing pretty well now that you're here and I'm not rambling anymore along the chat. That's very good. That's a cool thing. I'm doing well now.
There we go. And this week we have the privilege of being with a legend to the scene.
Yep.
We got Johnny Plague, John Cooke. Welcome to the stream. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. It's it's an honor to have you here, man. I think you as a person, as a vocalist, I think has had a lot of influence on the scene that both Yan and I have grew up in. So it's definitely super cool to have you on.
Oh, awesome. Hey, I got to say real quick,
Yeah.
I feel like the band stuff, like I love it. It's still part of my life. It almost feels like it's part of a past life at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost 40. It's just crazy, right? Started the band when I was 15.
Absolutely.
I've gotten into this daily grind of work, and I have a son and a wife and these things. And then I saw the video that you guys did on the history of Winds of Plague. And I was just so moved by that. And I haven't really talked about band stuff or done an interview or anything like that in a really long time. And I just felt really pushed to reach out and have this conversation. So, thank you guys so much for putting that together. It was really cool to watch that introspective look at the band. And I'm excited to kind of dig into it a little bit more tonight.
That's so kind and so cool for, to hear that, because when you reached out to me, I was like, wait, because I did the video, it was very important to me to, when I started the channel, the goal was basically to document the whole MySpace era, the whole deathcore thing that no one was really documenting. I was like, that's very important, so I started doing it. And very early on, after a few videos, people were like, please do Winds of Plague, please do Winds of Plague. And of course I wanted to do it, but the video did well. And when you reached out, I was like, wait, I was like amazed, because I was 15, putting a CD in my car and listening to Winds of Plague. Like, it was a big thing in my life. Impaler was the infamous moment where there's just a synth, and then you come in with the gnarly breakdown and the big growl and Decimate the Weak and all that. As Dom said, you had such a huge impact, and I know for you probably it's hard to see it that way, but you really did. And so when you reached out and you're like, hey, I would be down, for the part 2 to help you out and stuff, I was like, okay, if we do the podcasting, I'm gonna be starstruck or something. I'm gonna be too happy. So it's a real honor, for real. Very happy.
Good. Well, I'm glad we made it happen.
Yeah, same, really. And everybody's super stoked. Like when we mentioned to your community, hey, it's going to be, people were just like surprised and happy. So thank you for doing for doing it as well. So
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, speaking of a past life, maybe, and the present. I've got a Facebook Facebook thing right here. You posted, my California blood doesn't handle the East Coast cold very well. Has that changed now that you lived on the East Coast now, right?
Yeah. So I did move to the East Coast. However, I'm in southern Georgia, so
Okay.
it's probably hotter than California most of the year.
Okay. Reverse.
So, yeah.
We've got the reverse going on.
Yeah, we went up to Vermont recently to go snowboarding and stuff. And yeah, I was like, okay, this is awesome, but I'm super glad I don't live in this because I don't think I could handle it. So yes.
Yeah, it's fun to visit and to then go back home afterwards. I feel that as fellow as two Canadians here, I feel that very much so.
We're right in the cold right now, so we understand. We completely understand. Yeah. Dumb.
I mean, what's been going on with you recently, man? Like you said, you're doing it's a daily grind now. You said for yourself, you're doing a lot of like horror stuff, right? Is that the main?
Yeah,
is that the main gig right now?
It is. I'll make a long story real short, but when we were touring constantly, we'd have little stints at home, and it was never longer than a couple weeks, maybe a month. Right, we toured quite a bit, and during one of those breaks, it lined up with the Halloween season, and I went and got a seasonal job at a place called Knott's Scary Farm, which is out in Southern California, as a scare actor working in haunted houses, scaring people. And I really enjoyed it. I really dug it. I really dug the production and everything that goes into it. And I continued to do that throughout the years. And then it came to a point where I saw a career path in themed entertainment. So I jumped on that. And so since, and I was kind of doing both for a while, and then it became a point where I was just consumed with it. So I started a company called Plague Productions, off of the Winds of Plague name there. And we did pretty much focused on creative and design for different things within the horror space, but a lot of haunted houses. We got to work on some music videos and do some fun things like that. And then have recently opened a production facility as well, where we're now fully building and fabricating sets for theme parks, haunted houses, movie sets, all kinds of stuff.
That's super cool, man. I was, doing some of the research for this. I kind of dug deep into some of that stuff, and some really fucking cool stuff going on in like the mazes, the escape room stuff, these things for movie sets and all. It's cool. It's cool, high caliber stuff. It's not like an amateur level by any means. It's impressive to see some of the things you guys are pulling off.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's I love the art form of it, and I've always been a builder, so I enjoy building things and fabricating. And we have a really good, fun little crew too that have been with me since the band days, even, and have continued on this next path as well.
Since we're on the horror topic, I have to ask, and not to put you on the spot, but favorite horror movie or series of all time? I'm just asking. I'm just curious. I know it's difficult.
I really enjoy Trick or Treat. That movie, I feel like, really embodies a lot of great things about horror, as well as the overall spirit of Halloween that I enjoy and want to try and live in 24/7. If you haven't noticed,
it's awesome.
But also gotta say the original Halloween, just nothing touches it.
Sure.
True. Totally fair. Yeah. And before moving on, Dom, I have to ask also, when I was doing my video, I watched an old interview in which you mentioned that you were watching The Office on tour, right?
Oh yeah.
Like it's still my favorite show to this day. So I have to ask, do you still enjoy it, or was like for that time?
I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, there we
I'm
go.
satisfied. I'm satisfied. Right. I'm happy now. I just wanted to ask.
It's funny. The Office. I cannot fall asleep unless it's on the TV.
No, you've got a best friend in Yan right
yes.
there.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with it. But it's literally one of those things. Even if when I'm traveling, like I'll have to have it on my phone or my iPad playing. That's the only way I can fall asleep. I don't know if it's gotten to that point now where it's like I can't sleep without it. But it's nightly.
It's just that boring.
A daily. I love it. It's not that it's that boring. It's that familiar. I think at this point.
Okay.
It's comforting.
Yeah. It's definitely comfort food for sure.
But right, Peacock just put out the super fan episode, so you get a little bit more. So I'm making my second way through those now, and and fingers crossed for new content from The Office.
And how crazy it is! Like the deleted scene are sometimes as good as the episode itself, like the show was so good that the deleted scene, they were not deleted because they were bad. They were deleted simply because they had to cut some stuff for for time. And I can't comprehend, and don't worry, Dom, I won't talk about The Office the whole time.
We're chilling, man.
Okay. But for me, I'm still amazed by the amount of talent in terms of writing, acting. Everybody on that show cared so much. And I'm listening to a podcast called The Office Ladies, in which they explain everything that they went through, and so much love and passion went into it. And if we talk about Steve Carell and all that, to me it's unmatched. Other shows are cool too, but like to me it's still unmatched to this day. So like it's 100%. Crazy. It's just crazy. It's
crazy that the fan or the explosion of The Office happened so far after it ended, right? Like
it's gotten like a big resurgence all of a sudden. It's weird.
But you were early though, because the interviews I've catch, you were watching the Bucks, like the DVDs on tour and stuff, and it wasn't. The Office was. It was early The Office when you were watching at this point, so you can say you were part of the. Early fans of The Office supporting. So that's pretty cool.
On TV as they were aired.
Yep. That's awesome. So that was my segment for I had to ask that. It was impossible for me not to mention The Office.
And I'm so glad you did. Yeah.
Perfect. You have a Dundee.
Hey, Jan, just to be clear, I even had it in my notes for you.
Thank you so much. He knows me so well, like for sure. There was no way, like I had to mention it. It's as weird as it sounds, those little things are a very big part of our lives, right? Like these comfort things, and it's part of your lifestyle. So I would have been surprised if you would have told me, oh no, I've watched like a couple ones and I've never watched it again. But now that it's confirmed,
still going.
I'm satisfied. I'm okay with it. Awesome. So
real quick, because I gotta add this too. Sure. I took a trip to Scranton.
Okay.
Just because of The Office. I was very disappointed with how much of the stuff is not there anymore. But I did have lunch at Cooper's. So.
That's so cool. So freaking cool. That's awesome. It must be weird to be there. Like after watching so many times, to actually be there must feel pretty real. At first you must be like, a bit shocked, but it's a dream of mine. I won't lie. It's still it's a dream that I have, just to see where it happened, but
there's definitely a disconnect because it was filmed in California, but there's, it's still fun to go see the pizza place and all those things, some of that stuff's, rooted in actual like establishments in Scranton. So anyways, enough Office. That was great though.
That's what I meant. Yeah, exactly. It's still, it's special. I don't know what you prepared them, but like, it would be cool to talk maybe about the early days. Absolutely, of like when it's okay.
Let's go for it. I mean, I mean, for me personally, I think I'd be curious to have your opinion, especially like I mentioned earlier. Yan and I, we both grew up through like our exposure to metal, I guess, or more extreme forms of metal was definitely like deathcore. I know, Winds of Plague has never really like fully been shouting through off of the rooftops that they're a deathcore band, but within the deathcore scene, I think it's fair to say that if you were a deathcore band, like a fan back in the day, you knew who Winds of Plague were, right? I think you guys became a staple to that scene for sure. But I'd be curious from your perspective specifically, because when you guys were coming up, deathcore wasn't really even a thing, right? If we go to the early days of the band, you know, like prior to Winds of Plague, what was it? Bleak December, I think was the name of the band. You know, it was more metalcore for sure. But then when you guys came out with the early demos and stuff, that was like early beginnings of deathcore. I'd be curious from your point of view, what that scene looked like for you and how you guys saw yourselves in there, from your point of view, I guess.
It was interesting in the early years for sure. It was one of those things when we first started like playing shows live and stuff. It felt like we were too metal for hardcore and we were too hardcore for metal, you know, and we were kind of trying to stumble along and find our way. But, then within the same scene, in playing the same shows and stuff, you had other bands starting to come out. There was a lot of great local bands, but more prominently bands like Suicide Silence that were right alongside of us at the time. And we almost kind of like formed our own little scene there. And it was just, I think we just kind of looked at it as like a heavier metal. In
California specifically too, right?
In Southern California specifically, I'm like going deep into the vaults of my early band days for this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so All Shall Perish was out at around that time as well. As Blood Runs Black came not too long after. There were a lot of great heavy bands. But yeah, I think it really just kind of took taking metalcore and taking it a step further into the deathcore realm. We found a lot of influence from straight up black metal bands too. You know, obviously like Dimmu Borgir was a huge influence for us with the synth stuff, and that's kind of what trailed into the breakdown type stuff, and how we kind of landed on that sound at that time. But yeah, it was definitely uncharted waters at the time.
Yeah, because we've talked about this, but the way you did it was super different. There's obviously nowadays people using synths and stuff in their music, but the way you guys did it, it made me feel like it was like this big war, you know, like I'm a big fan of like Lord of the Ring and all that stuff. So like the image that I had was like this warrior, and it probably helps that Decimate the Weak and the whole image of it was like kind of a war even after, but it was a kind of a badass way to introduce synth, and it didn't feel out of place at all. It felt real with the breakdowns, as opposed to super metalcore bands who would put electro parts that kind of made the music softer. You guys, it helped make it heavier on the other side. So I think it's hard to accomplish, especially when you do hardcore two steps as well and stuff like that. So it's a very unique approach, especially early on like that. So that's, you know,
I can't think of the band's names at the moment, but yeah, there were a good amount of bands doing synth stuff. But to your point, it was very electronic dance sounding, I think. Yeah. At the time. It
wasn't going for epic. It wasn't the same kind of,
correct. Something about a horse. There was a
Horse the Band.
Horse the Band. You know, like they were big at the time out there. Yeah. The stuff like that. It was a lot more electronic sounding. But it's funny you mentioned Lord of the Rings, because that was very prominent in our minds, especially during the first albums. Right, those movies were coming out. We were ditching as a band, ditching high school and going and seeing those movies as they were coming out in theaters. And at one point, when we changed the band name from Bleak December to Winds of Plague, we were trying to figure out how to name it something Urukai. So, like, it was definitely a big part of influence, and having that imagery in our heads, I guess, while writing the music, was trying to make it this epic battle. Like, what would the orcs be listening to while going to war?
It worked, literally, and some of your vocals literally sounded like an orc, so it worked fairly well, honestly. But yeah, it was a whole vibe, right? Like, and it's not easy to, like, you can have something in mind, but to create it and make people feel it is something else. And you know, like the image of a war felt, you know, perfect for people moshing and enjoying like heavy music live, because that's kind of how it feels when you open up like a big mosh pit with people. You almost, it feels like that, you know, not that I wanted to fight with people, but it felt like that. So I don't know. I think it was a different approach, and I'm pretty sure that it's part of the reasons why you attract so many people's attention. No one was doing it, and the whole image. I know you didn't start with a girl on synth, but afterwards you were, having like, and I thought it was badass to always, to have like girls doing it and headbanging. And I could be wrong. She was doing vocals as well. So like it was, I think this was also something that people thought was cool, and not many bands were doing it, right? To have like a girl part of it. So
at the time, right? I think now it's a lot more common. But at that time, the synth thing really came from, we just want to do something different. Like, what can we do to set ourselves apart? And my poor brother played piano. So we're like, hey, try this. And like, we forced him into it at first. And then he moved on with his life. Good for him. And then we just had that void, and that's when we I think Kristen was the first female keyboard player we had, where we connected with her, and she was great, had a huge presence, and it was kind of no turning back from there. Like, once she came in and became such a large part of the band, when she moved on, when we had to find a replacement, it's not like we were like dead set on finding a female, but we lucked out with Elena, and then now Adrian, just both great, strong performers, strong players.
Yeah, I think, but I think it was, at least from my perspective, it was part of your whole image, right? Like, to have the badass keyboard girl player. So I thought it was like a cool thing to do when another, no one was doing it as well. So you did a lot of, first, and I think that's what Dom was saying, right? Like you guys did a lot of things that no one was doing. So you paved the way for a lot of stuff to happen.
I think it was particular back then, especially because it was so early as well. I think we've had these discussions before where, a lot of most new deathcore bands back in the day were inherently different from one another, because no one was really basing themselves off of anything particular. There wasn't like the big bands to kind of go back to. People were taking from completely different influences. And I think that made for like some completely different styles of deathcore. Some bands were more melodic, some were more, for you guys, it was very, very melodic as well, symphonic, but then a lot of hardcore influences as well, right? And we've had different stages of deathcore where hardcore has been more present, and other phases where it's kind of been out, like you listen to deathcore today, there's next to no hardcore influence whatsoever, in most of the popular bands, at least. I'd be curious, because I remember it was like, I was reading this, there was somewhere, so, you guys were talking about, you guys don't look like metalheads, or maybe it was you specifically who was talking about this, but how was that? Because clearly there was a pretty big, I guess, hardcore background to some of the music you guys were listening to, on top of, you mentioned black metal and stuff like that, but I think the hardcore elements really gave it a really big part of the identity as well, right?
Yeah, early on, especially myself and Nick Pino and Andrew Glover, we were all just huge hardcore fans. If it wasn't for the band, we would just be hardcore kids at hardcore shows all the time. Like that was us as people at the time. And so I think it just kind of naturally trickled into the music. We really enjoyed playing those parts, especially live. And that really gets the crowd amped up, and we had a good time with that stuff. But yeah, it did. It definitely, once again, it's like too metal for hardcore, too hardcore for metal. Especially in those early years, supporting bands like Danzig or Dying Fetus, or some of these where it was just a little too much for some of those fan bases. Really, until we kind of hit our stride and kind of had our own fan base, really. But once again, I think it's a thing that set us apart, and we probably, with not setting ourselves apart, wouldn't have gone as far as we did. So I think all in all, we stuck true to what we wanted to do, and and it ended up working out.
I think you guys kind of bridged a gap though, as well. I don't know if obviously I'm sure, from your guys' perspective, maybe there was a sense of not fitting in, in hardcore, but not fitting in with death metal and kind of being in a weird in between. But from looking at like the tours that you guys were doing, I mean, I'm looking at stuff, on one side, you've got the like you said, maybe the Dying Fetus was too on the deathcore, on the death metal side for a band like you guys, but you guys did do a lot of deathcore, like toured with a lot of deathcore bands as well. But then you'd also go and tour with a band like Stick to Your Guns, and some other like really hardcore focused bands. And I can imagine a world, I don't know how it was for you guys personally, like actually living it, but I can imagine a world where Winds of Plague would kind of also fit in those two worlds nicely, but how was that for you guys? Was it really just kind of like not really feeling like you fit anywhere?
At first, it definitely got better. I think, like I said, as our fan base grew and we were more of a draw at these shows, that certainly helped. I was going through my head trying to think of all the shows where we got shit thrown at us. For those earlier tours with some of those more extreme, one way or the other, hardcore, death metal, whatever it may be. But yes, and then as the scene continued to grow, and like I said, the other bands were starting to come out and do the same thing, and we were almost kind of creating a bigger path in general for deathcore. It definitely became better. Yeah, then we can go tour with bands like Terror and do well. In same thing, I'm trying to Stick to Your Guns, Parkway Drive, all those type of bands that we got to tour with and ended up just
bands like Chimera and stuff like that, which were way more like metalcore, but in like a traditional sense, and kind of makes sense with that too, right? Like you guys had huge metalcore roots as well, so it's kind of like being able to play it on all sides, I guess.
And if you hear, like, when I picture a song like This Made the Week, to me at least, it sounds more hardcore than anything. Like the vision I have from this song, like the vibes that I have, with the groove, like for me, it's straight up.
Definitely Reloaded. Like, did you? What was? I'd be curious actually, because that song in particular, I remember kind of like mind blowing people when it came out. Like, oh, what is this? Well, obviously with the iconic intro, but the very hardcore focused song compared to the rest of the album. I know you guys have done some similar stuff on albums post that, but was that like a conscious decision? Like, actually, I'd be curious. Did you guys think that song would be a song that people would gravitate towards? No. Like, whose decision was it to even make it a single?
Well, we all were like, okay, we want to do a hardcore song, but I think originally the intent was to be like a secret track. Okay. Like 5 minutes after the record ended, because it just was going to stick out like a sore thumb. And then when we tracked it and we showed it, a couple of people are like, oh, this is really awesome. And we're like, okay. So it became part of the main part of the record. And then from there on, it felt like every record we did after that, we tried to do another song kind of like that.
Yeah. That's so those kind of things are so fun to stumble upon though, right? Like when you have these like really unexpected moments of creativity that happen that you don't really think is going to necessarily be anything. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's a big thing, it's I don't know, but I remember, people were really like flipping their shit in a good way when you guys put that one out.
And
yeah, I mean, live, it's always our favorite song.
Oh, sure. I can get that. That's nuts. Like peak, like crowd involvement. I'm sure, like people like knowing the parts of the song, and it's very catchy and stuff. And
yeah, I'd be curious to know also, because we talked about your influence in terms of bands and music and stuff, but you're also a vocalist, right? So I would be very curious to know, since you were part of the early days, who inspired you prior to the band, but also to know you've played with so many amazing bands as well, like Suicide Silence with Mitch and people like that. Like I would also be curious to know, from a live perspective as you were touring, if one of them, really stood out and like you were impressed by the live performance and stuff like that, like just prior to the band and then touring with bands, like who I guess inspired you or that you remember.
I feel like even now in my other walks of life I will always try to be a sponge and soak up as much as I can. And I think in my early years, trying to think of the bands. I mean, like some of the early deathcore or not deathcore, metalcore bands like Poison the Well, Unearth. and then bands like Chimera, Hatebreed. Like those are all the types of bands that I think we're kind of really pushing the extreme screaming aspect of it that I really was like latching onto at that time. And then also some of the more like death metal bands, black metal bands, Cradle of Filth, Demon Borgir, those kinds of bands too. And I think I was just trying to find a balance in there of that type of stuff while also mixing it up and going into the more hardcore vocals and going into the more like growly death metal vocals to try and really just because I was trying not to let the songs go flat. Like I wanted to break it up and have these ups and downs throughout the songs. And then when we started touring, yeah, I mean, like Mitch was, I just remember like being backstage and just hearing Mitch warm up and being like, holy shit, like that's what he sounds like without a mic or without a sound system or any kind of anything. And being like, wow,
there's no EQ in that voice. Yeah.
And I don't even remember where, actually it was the show where we met Art Cruz. He was drum teching for Suicide Silence at the time. I don't remember where it was, but I just remember that was it. And we were backstage and I remember like Mitch warming up and I'd be like, do that again. And I was trying to like just mimic him and match where he was. And I couldn't get anywhere close, but you know, he was amazing. He was really good. And then, you know, as all these newer bands are coming out, I'm so bad with names. But I mean, skipping past that, like bands like Whitechapel and all these other bands that came out afterwards as well were just amazing vocalists.
It was a great time to, you know, like even looking back, even with now, you know, newer bands, new techniques and stuff like that. Even now looking back, it was impressive. If you look at like Phil Bozeman and like Mitch Locker, and they're still amazing. But you know, even if it was early, I feel like it was a great era to be a part of, you know, like so many talented bands and vocalists and stuff. It's crazy.
And it was like on the dawn of social media too. So that's what when I think back of it, it was very unique to that, where it was a small group, right? It's like every tour we did was with, I mean, within the year we were touring the same bands over and over. Amir, Suicide Silence, Stick to Your Guns, all those bands that we kept seeing all the time. And it was just a really cool community to be a part of. And now, I'm a little bit removed from it, but it just seems like it's such a massive pool of bands these days, which is great. But at the time, you know, it was a lot smaller. It felt a lot smaller, like a lot more tight knit. Had a lot of really great friendships and good times out there with those bands.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Speaking of touring, I guess I'm curious. You guys wrote a lot of music on tour, right? Like while you guys were touring, because that I think maybe that was more of a thing back in our day, you know. But that's not really something you see all that much. As much as technology would allow us to do it even more so now. I'd be curious because you guys specifically, I think, have always, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys have always had the live show in mind when doing your music. Like you can see the intentionality behind like the gang shouts and like the vocal hooks and even to, you know, the breakdowns, for example. It's another example of like, you know, that would get a crowd going type thing. So I'd be curious in terms of like, if that's something like actually how you saw it, but then B, maybe how that would translate, I guess, writing that music as you guys are playing shows essentially, and probably being able to see all that stuff live, right?
Two parts on that, I guess. First off, like I hated, so we with Decimate the Week, like that was a collection of a couple of years worth of writing and songs that we put together. And then the last album we did, Blood of My Enemy. Once again, we had a lot of time to write that, but all the other albums in between, I felt, looking back on them, it felt so rushed because we were trying to do it while touring and we didn't really have the time to sit down and work on that. And that's just looking back on it, that's one thing that sticks out, right? Is I wish we would have paused a little bit, taken a break to be able to focus on those things.
For a while, you guys were doing nonstop, right?
I mean, I think we were doing like around 300 shows a year.
Oh my God.
Right.
Which is just constant. I mean, so it was a lot. But as far as I live for the live shows, like the recording and the writing. Not my favorite thing, it obviously comes with it. Like I just love playing shows, like that was my thing. So yes, I definitely was like always thinking, okay, will this translate to a live show? Will this get the crowd amped up? Will it encourage interaction and getting people on stage and singing along and all those kinds of things, right? So yes, definitely was always the forefront of my mind anyways when writing is like, okay, how do we encourage that crowd participation?
I would be curious to know, and it's a big question, but like I would be curious to know when exactly as a band you kind of thought like, okay, we actually have a shot. We kind of made it, because for some band, it's like when they get signed. For some other band, it's like when they play with a big band and stuff like that. Do you recall a moment where as a band, you looked at each other and you're like, okay, we're, like it's becoming bigger than I ever thought it would be, I don't know if you have a moment.
So what's crazy about this is, and it's messed up, is in my head, we never made it. Like that was my mentality, is like I just have that personality trait where I'm always looking, like I have a really hard time sitting in the now and appreciating that. I'm always looking, okay, what's next? What are we gonna do that's bigger? Okay. What's the next tour we're gonna get on? What bands do we need to tour with? What record label are we doing? It's like I'm always looking to what's the next tour. I never really felt like I got to like just seize the moment and enjoy it. And that's one of those things. But so I felt like I was always trying to look for what's next, and it was never good enough in my mind. But there was one moment where it was in 2008, the Blacks of the Black tour, Danzig. We pulled up to the first day of that show. It was our first bus tour. It was in Miami. The catering was on the beach, and I remember like calling my dad and being like, "All right, Dad, this is pretty cool." But I don't know. Other than that, like I just always feel like it was never enough.
It's funny how different it is for the outside, right? Because for kids like me and Dom, like seeing Winds of Plague, it was like, a big deal, big name. And in our head, it's like you're on top with everybody. It's like, oh my God, they made it. And it's always funny to know from an inside perspective, like as a band, how it was. And most people, they don't realize on the spot, right? Like you release an album that today is looked at as a classic, but back then, deathcore was pretty controversial, right? Like with the reviews and stuff like that, like a lot of, it was hard for the death metal community to even I broke your light. But it was pretty difficult for the I guess the death metal community to even accept deathcore, right? So I don't know if it's part of the reasons why most bands didn't really realize they were making it, but definitely I can tell you that Winds of Plague is, for everybody, considers a classic, like you guys were just like part of it.
I mean, look, retrospective, like looking back on it, I appreciate everything that happened and everything that we were able to do, and a lot of great opportunities, a lot of great memories. So I mean, looking back on it, it's amazing, right? And like I said, that's why I feel like it's a whole nother lifetime ago. It was just a lot of great experiences packed into those about 10 years or so that we toured so heavily. It's just that, at the time it's tough. It's tough when you're in it.
You're caught up in the moment as well. Like you said, you're always looking for the next thing. I think personally, the times I've been most miserable is when the band's not had anything on the horizon too. And that especially kind of kicks in, that kind of thought like, oh shit, it's over. Or like, what am I doing? Like we didn't make it, there's never going to be another tour. That type of mentality definitely is easy to kick in. So I feel I kind of feel that for sure.
And I remember, it definitely always like looking at I didn't realize it at the time, but everything is in life is ups and downs, and it's never a straight path, right? So when you hit those down moments, it's definitely very stressful, and you're worried about record sales and merch sales and all these stupid things. And I remember Brian Chapetti, Bleeding Through, a good friend. He was a great mentor, being in that previous generation of death metal or deathcore, whatever you want to call it. But he told me, he goes, you need to just worry about your own journey, just enjoy it. And that was definitely something that stuck.
That's true, and it's weird that it's difficult to do, right? Because but every time you look back at a moment, a lot of the times we're like, that was awesome. But when you're doing it and you have like so many goals and stuff, like it feels like it goes so fast. So I can completely relate. And but before moving on, I had another question, because I know Dom is gonna have other questions as well. But
Yeah, chilling.
I'm kind of curious to know, when you got signed and you could go, I guess, in a studio, like an actual, like probably bigger experience in studio that you had. How did it feel? Do you recall that? Like being signed, actually going in a big place, and did you feel like a pressure or just being happy? Or I'm just curious to know that as well.
Yeah. So when we got reached out to by Century Media by a guy named Steve Joe. He was the A&R there. He was awesome. But I thought it was a joke.
We talked about him not too long ago with
Did you? Yeah.
with Cam with Big Chocolate.
Oh yeah. I mean, Steve's probably had such a huge impact on so many bands' careers and lives. But yeah, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was okay. Somebody's trying to get a free T-shirt out of me or something. And I remember, like, it took me a while to respond, and then when I realized it was real and it was a label, as great as Century Media, that was a pretty amazing moment. And it seemed like it went really fast. We jumped into the studio really fast on that one. And what's funny is, yes, we went in and we recorded drums in a real professional studio, and it felt like it was in a movie. Like, it's like, what is this? And it was this big, great place. But then after the 2 days of drums, we went and recorded the rest of Decimate the Week in Nick H., our guitar player's living room.
Okay.
So our nice studio moment was short lived, and then we did the rest of it with Daniel Castleman up at Nick's parents' house when they were out of town on vacation.
Okay, so at least you got the drum. Yeah, you still got your
got a little taste of it.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Stu Madsen though was like on the big up and up though. The guy who mixed the album. I'm assuming that must have been kind of cool to hear a mix coming back from someone like him who's worked on so many iconic albums still today, but like especially back then, was really on the come up.
That was that was Steve Joe as well. He's the one that pushed the record to Madsen and I mean, that was like, when that came back, like, that's us. Like, that was a pretty crazy moment. Like, it
recording in the living room too, to have something sounded like how it came out is kind of. I mean, we're used to it now, but especially back in the day, it's kind of otherworldly, I guess.
And then he probably got annoyed because, like, put more 808 drops in there. That was a big note coming back. Put more 808s in.
Everything's perfect, but
yeah,
correct.
Let me just throw in a few things that's really gonna fuck up with your mix,
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, and
you had to back then. Just say you had to have the 808s.
True. I think, like, the bass drop, like we've talked about that, right? But like the bass drop and all these parts, like, deathcore was special also because I feel like it was very experimental in so many ways, like trying things and just like things that you wouldn't see in death metal, right? So I think I'm glad that bands were just like not afraid to. Well, some bands were not afraid to try out things, and that's why it's so unique and looked at as as classic. And I wanted to ask another question. It felt like the artwork were tout out, like it felt like an important part of your presentation, and even in terms of concept, the album after. I've read a little bit about it, but after Decimate the Week, it was this whole war concept and stuff like that. Would you say it was mostly you, or it was a band thing? I was curious about in this part.
The artwork was me mostly.
Okay.
The samurai aesthetic was just something that I grew up with martial arts and stuff in my life, and just really enjoyed all of that imagery. And I always thought of, like, the samurai as being, like, the most badass warrior that there has ever
yeah.
been in history, right? And just their whole code of ethics and loyalty and all those things, honor, whatever. So I really dug that, and that's kind of where that first one came from. And I'm such an asshole for forgetting the artist's name, but he.
Oh, the first one is Par Olofsson, right?
Par, yes, there you go, Par.
Yeah.
He was just amazing, and that for him to even take the time to do that first record for us, for this band that nobody knows who they are, was amazing, and it really did set our image in place, right? It set it in motion from there on out, where we had to use him for the next couple as well. And then yes, the Great Stone War was kind of once again playing off the Lord of the Rings, this idea that there's this epic fight, apocalyptic battle, and that would be after civilization has fallen apart, it'd be fought with stone. So that's where that kind of concept came from, and once again, he just nailed it. It was such a great illustration on what that would look like.
Yeah, because I always thought it was like a very important thing, like to you can go for a vibe, but when you have a whole, I don't know to explain it, but like a universe kind of thing, like I'm guessing even in terms of performance, it feels, even bigger probably to have all these things in mind as the creation. And I was about to say that I think personally that the image played a big role in the impact that you guys had. Like you thought about Winds of Playing and you had the art in mind, and then I remember the merch and all that. So would it be fair to say that it played fairly a big role in the popularity as well, like the art and the... Totally.
Yeah, and I think it helped give us identity beyond the music as well, as far as a branding standpoint. But I can't tell you the amount of people that told me, they just, back in the day when you had to go buy CDs, they just saw the artwork and bought it because of the artwork, and then listened to it.
Especially back then. I think that's still a thing today, but especially back then when music wasn't so accessible, you would like go up to the record shop and be like, oh, this just looks cool, let's try it out,
Yeah, it's I think a lot of covers and it's memorable, right? Like when you have a cover that you like on top of it, like if you connect with it, it's another addition to connect to a world and be more of a fan, and then look at the rest. So definitely it's important. But I recall doing that, what you said, like just going to the place and not really knowing, and just like, I love the logo and the band. I'm like, let's try it. So
it
looks
badass. It must sound badass. That's kind of the thing.
Been burned a few times by that, but yes.
Yeah, sure. That I think kind of carried through even into the live show and stuff. Like further on, you had the whole like the Bane thing going on, and more props on stage, and I think that kind of leads into what you do now, right? Maybe there's some sort of intersection there that ended up happening. But I think you guys have always done a good job of presenting more than just music, right? Like to Jan's point, like there's a vibe there. And I think that does, so some people, some people will see it as a gimmick, but I really do think there's like added value to creating, to Jan's point, like a universe, like something that's more than just listening to the music, right? It's definitely something that, like, just the artwork, you're listening to the music and you have the artwork with it, and it kind of, both of those things can work together and kind of create more than just if you were just listening to the music.
Totally. And that was kind of always the way we looked at it, is like we wanted to offer something more than if somebody just sat there and listened to the record at home. Like what we wanted to perform and put on a show. And so we did invest more into the production of it, and I think especially as the scene continued to grow, and with like I mentioned before, the explosion of social media and more bands, and there's more and more shows happening all the time in all the cities. Like, okay, what are we going to do that's going to get people to choose our show over this other one or whatever? That was kind of the mindset there. And I think that's still continued with a lot of bands today. Like Carnifex and does a great job with their live performance.
100%, yeah.
And so I think you're starting to see more and more focus put on live performance production.
Definitely. I think to be fair, it's a big part of it. As a fan, I appreciate when I see that, the show, like there's kind of a touch to it. Like it's not just listening to the artists in the album. Like there's actually a performance. Like you mentioned Carnifex. I think with this whole look and the dark, like I don't know. I'm pretty sure it makes people go a little crazier. And it brings me to my next question. I was about to ask you if you recall like the wildest show, like if you have a memory of people just going insane at one of your set, like if one show stands even today you remember.
Yeah, we played there's Summer Slaughter in Mexico City.
Okay.
Actually, I mean, there's been a lot of crazy shows, but that one particularly was like nuts. Like, we showed up, we flew into Mexico City, and there's people waiting at the airport. We were like taken by like these like private vans to the shows, and I remember like the security while we were playing. We played in some like high school gym, but it was filled, like the completely filled. And I just remember like the barricades and the security being overran to the point where they had to escort us out of the building, and like all our merch table got overran and destroyed. Like it was just like pure chaos.
Oh my God.
That's definitely one that really sticks out.
Did that shut down the show?
No.
Okay.
Nope. They just let it play out until it was calm enough, I guess, for the next band to go on.
Wow.
But that was a fun one. I mean, that, like I said, I live for the live shows, so that was always my goal, was to try and get the crowd amped up as much as possible. I always had the mindset of a professional wrestler of trying to get people, into it and responding. So that I loved crazy shows. So we had a lot of good ones over the years. Sorry, Dom, by the way, I'm asking like 50,000 questions because I'm
here
like,
for it, man.
It's because I think it's always cool to have the perspective from people playing shows and stuff, because as a fan, you don't really know, right? Like you go to show, you're trying to go crazy. You hope that the memory of the band, you hope that they're having a good time and they're going to hopefully come back, especially for me and Dom that we're super far in Montreal. You're like, we better mosh like crazy if we want them to come back. But I'm sure it's always fun to hear that the craziest show was at their place, for people in Mexico. In that example, they're probably like, it was us, so it's definitely a part of it. But I was curious to know if you remember also a full circle moment for you as a, like someone like maybe an idol that you met, like, because you were part of the early days. So for you, bands like Suicide Silence they were basically buddies, right? But did you ever get to meet like some, I don't know, like death metal bands or somebody that you remember, like a moment that you were almost like nervous to meet that person? Did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, quite a few over the years. Growing up in Southern California, like I think I mentioned Bleeding Through, and bands Bleeding Through, Throwdown, 18 Visions were all huge bands. I had all the posters on my wall growing up. So when we got to the point of playing shows with them and being friends with them, like that was really cool moments. Davey Havoc, AFI, that was another big one for me. I loved AFI. Got to play one show with them in Belgium, I believe it was. Wow. So that was neat. Hatebreed has been like a constant for me. Like since I started getting into heavy metal till today, I listen to Hatebreed routinely. So that was really cool to get to tour with them and become friends with them as well.
You've mentioned, I guess, Hatebreed and Lamb of God are like two bands I think I've seen mentioned quite a few times in like different interviews and stuff like that as being like up there for you.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy is the Lamb of God? Yeah, Lamb of God, it was, I've loved that. I remember seeing there's that old Hellfest documentary with Lamb of God on there with Chico's Nuts. And ever since, I think Trustkill put that out a long time ago. But ever since that, I was obsessed with Lamb of God and loved Lamb of God. And I remember the first time we played with them and Art was with us, like, we were the local band, right? That was opening for Lamb of God, and they sent Art to go pick them up from the airport. And
funny how that works out in the end, right?
So talk about full circle. Not for me, but for Mr. Cruz. That's a pretty incredible one. And now that he's just a part of that band in general is just
it's a different kind of call he got
for the second time around. Yes.
Oh, no, that's awesome. I always want to hear that because it's like, as much as when I was younger, touring felt like the absolute dream. Now that I'm doing videos, I'm noticing how much work it is. Like, I'm not saying it's not fun, but like I'm understanding the work behind it. So, like my perspective now is that it makes these moments even more wholesome to meet like your idol, because you've worked your way, like you've built your audience, and now you're becoming buddies with the bands you were listening to before. So that's why I love asking those questions, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is amazing, and it's once again like being able to like look back on that and being like it's pretty cool to go from just being a fan, having this person as a poster on your wall, to then going on tour with them and stuff. It's pretty awesome when your hard work kind of pays off in that form.
Yeah, exactly. And Dom, I don't know if you have other questions for the early days, but I'm also curious because I have but it's later on questions that I have.
You got to stop asking me these questions. You're good to go and say whatever you want.
I just didn't want to skip you in if you're still in the early. No, I was just curious to know the influence. Later on, I really love the sound. I think it's called Sewer Mouth. Is that the name of the song? Like, I think that's the name of, like, it's full of breakdowns. It's super good. And it's like, it's later on. I don't remember exactly because now I'm in my memories. I didn't go back right before, which I should have done. But it was still Winds of Plague, but to me, it felt a little more hardcore. It was full of breakdowns, a little less, I don't want to say theatrical, but a little less heavy on the synths and stuff like that. I was just curious to know if you were trying things or, just exploring.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff was trying to, we had a lot of success early on with Decimate the Week. That album did better than any of us thought it was going to do. And then I think we kind of got into this thing of like, once again, like, what do we do next? And I think we were kind of searching for how to evolve the sound. And I think in some ways it was cool and it ended up working well. In other ways, it's not so much. But I think that's where a lot of that stuff came from, is like trying to find. I hate it when bands use this term, but I'm going to use it because what was going through our heads at the time was trying to find a more mature sound, I guess, which we shouldn't have cared about at the time. We should just stick with what we're doing. But here we are. And that's kind of where that came from, I think, was experimenting and trying to kind of find the sound and find the path we wanted to go down.
And that can be a selfless thing too, though. It doesn't have to be about doing it for, doing something more mature for the fans or anything like that. Like, it's not like, I think there's like maybe a negative connotation around, like you said, like the word mature, let's say, but I think it's just as maybe it wasn't that way. But I think for a lot of people, you just don't want to write the same shit over and over again. You just, you want to see what the next step is. How can you push that envelope? How can you bring it into something else and make it interesting for you guys, I guess, at the end of the day too, right?
In coming from, being a full transparency, honest place, I think at that time we were trying to like, what's the best thing for us to do, opposed to what we wanted to do.
Sure.
And okay. I think as young kids at the time, like feeling the pressure from record labels and trying to stay relevant and all those things, I think we did go down some paths that we thought was the right thing to do. Later in our career, especially with the last record, that was the record we wanted to make.
Okay.
And people bought it or not, it didn't matter. We were just making what we thought sounded cool.
It does make sense, but you never know, right? Because for me, when you dropped, and sorry, I was blanking on the name, but it's called Resistance, right? Like when you dropped this one, I was actually surprised, and of course I was a fan of what you did before, but I was pleasantly surprised because my taste was kind of, it was different. So hearing those, kind of this new groove, this new vibe, personally, I liked it, as I said. So I'm sure there's also other people who, really enjoyed it. The only I would say maybe risk when you do that is your identity as a, your image as a band. When you move a little bit from that, like some fans are not forgiving, I guess, so that's, but at the same time,
that's a them problem though.
Yes,
we're being honest.
yes. But I'm sure there's other people like me who liked what you did before, and this one they were also pleasantly surprised. Or like, oh, let's go, and they went for it. Right. So you never know, but there's something to say about doing what you want. I think, having fun is essential, and you can feel it on the record and the energy live as well. So
I think at the end of the day, it's something we recorded it and we liked it, we would, we, for every album we'd over record songs and we would cut it down to what we wanted, what we liked. I guess what I wanted to state there, especially if there's younger bands that might be listening to this, and my advice is, stick to what you want to do. There's a lot of noise out there when you have the spotlight on you and you're making records and stuff, but
metrics that don't really matter at the end of the day,
it doesn't yeah. At the time it's hard to ignore those things because that's what's loudest, but at the end of the day it doesn't matter.
You're the one playing the songs live afterwards, right? And you gotta, right? You better enjoy them.
And even now, all these years later, right? It's like, I can't tell you anything that anybody might have said on the internet, but those songs are still available on Spotify. So
there you go. And especially back then, I remember people were, a lot of things like it would go very fast, right? Like a rumor or something, or this album, like it was as much as I have good memories, it was pretty controversial, and many, like, as you would try something new and people are not going for it, and then everybody would talk about it. So I guess it was also scary for a band, because now you're signed and you want to do well, you want to be on big tours, and let's be real, all these things are affected still by that. Even if people are loud or whatever, if your, I guess, reputation or the sales or whatever, it's affecting the tours you're doing or your next move. So I guess there's also something to be said about it's scary. It can be scary for bands to, stick to your gun and be like, okay, let's not listen to that. I guess it's scary is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, there's a lot. There was a lot of, from looking back on it, there was a lot of pressure, and like I said, we were younger and growing and learning life lessons and all these things, right? So it was a lot to figure out and navigate, and you just do the best you can through it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the important, that's because if you have fun and you keep going, we've seen that many times, right? With big bands like that would get a lot of hate. And then next thing you know, they keep going, and years later, they're legends. It's almost always like that. So I think the advice you're giving of just like, do what you like and keep doing it. You're going to find people on your way. You're going to find, the proper fans and community, I guess. So I think it's a good advice.
And if it doesn't work out, you were true to yourself, and you can look back on it and be proud of it. So
there you go.
Either way, it's a win-win there.
There you go. Completely.
You talked earlier about wrestling and like the kind of like the live aspect of, looking at it from a wrestler's point of view. And obviously, you've been on a fitness journey for a long time now as well. I think that's been apparent since probably very early in the band as well. I was reading up on some stuff, and you maybe struggling to keep going to the gym while you were on tour, maybe in the first tours and stuff. And at a certain point, you made that decision to, by at all costs, work on yourself and stay healthy on tour. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about maybe tour life and how that was, trying to balance, health and tour is like a thing that I think most musicians those two things don't mesh well, right?
Yeah. I've been straight edge my whole life. I didn't drink or do anything. And that's very prevalent in the touring world. So that I guess I didn't have the hindrance of that.
Sure.
I think that's probably a tough thing to balance is fitness, touring and drinking, but
Yeah, okay.
to that extent,
You can only have two.
yeah, pick two. Which nothing wrong with that, but that just wasn't for me. And the mind is a very powerful thing. And I realized once I made up my mind, I'm going to go to the gym every day. And it doesn't matter what that looks like. If it means having to take call a taxi before Uber, you have to take a taxi to the gym for an hour or go pay $20 for the day pass, whatever it is, I'm going to do it every single day. And once I just made that decision in my mind, it became good. And I realized not only was it like a good, good for youth from a fitness standpoint, but also mentally, it was nice to go be by
get
myself,
away from everything else.
Get away from the stinky clubs we were playing in or venues, whatever it may be, and just go and just have that time. Also, a lot of the gyms had showers, so that was a nice plus.
It's awesome bonus for sure.
All right. Also, the occasional spa.
Yeah, exactly. The occasional hot tub was always nice on tour. But once I just kind of made it part of my daily routine, it wasn't too difficult anymore.
Did you recall having moments also with fans that would bond with you talking about fitness? Did that happen over the years?
Yeah, I think so to an extent. I get people asking me for advice all the time, and I was always happy to share that information. Or whatever that was. But look, I still think that the gym is a great thing for both body and mind. And I think nobody ever goes to the gym and regrets it. So I was always happy to share that information. But yeah, we met a lot of friends also through the fitness industry, and also other friends on tour that wanted to go to the gym and work out, and we would share cabs to the gym and stuff. So it was all around a positive, healthy thing.
It probably makes a big difference too. Let's be honest here. Playing a show completely hungover, feeling terrible, compared to you go to the gym, you eat well, you're focused mentally. I would be surprised if there was no difference between between those two things. So looking back on it, you probably had, I wouldn't say an advantage, but it was for sure, it was helping you perform in a better way. So
discipline in life in general is half the battle, right? So that definitely helped, and that was, like I said, my main thing was I love playing shows. I wanted to put on the best show possible. People were choosing to go to our shows over other shows. They were spending their hard-earned money, whatever it may be. Like, I felt like I needed to honor that and do the best I could do on my end. So I would, unless I was dying sick, like I would get up there and give my 110% to every single show. Even dying sick, I would try. I think there's only one time I wasn't able to. But you mentioned eating healthy. That's the hard part. That's the tough part on tour. But you can find
cab once to the gym. That's one thing, but the three trips to different places while you're on the road is probably less of a
and every single venue wants to give you pizza.
Of course, classic.
I was also curious. You mentioned being straight edge in the world. Let's be honest, that loves to party. Was it? Was it easy for you just because I'm guessing you were being invited to tons of stuff, and maybe some people that don't know you were surprised when you say, "Oh, I don't drink," or whatever. Was it a challenge for you? It was always kind of easy just saying it's not my thing, or?
No, I feel like I'd always find a way to fit into the situation, whatever it may be. So no, I don't really remember anything ever feeling awkward or anything like that. But yes, there were lots. If anything, I would just leave early because I was tired.
Watching The Office in the van instead.
Exactly. That sounds pretty good at 1 a.m. But it was all good. It was fun, and I'm not a judgmental person whatsoever. So people do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. And I'll go laugh at you.
So like mutual respect kind of thing. Like people were just like, oh, okay, fine. And you did your things. I was just curious because some people, they're like, oh, come on, whatever.
Look,
like some, so
I'll just say it. I'm saying I'm not gonna try to pick a fight with John. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. Maybe not the perfect target for that. Yeah, that's not a good choice. Good point. No, but like I don't know. I never did that personally. You know, telling someone, oh, you should, like, if someone would tell me, hey, I don't drink, perfectly fine. But I know there's these kinds of people also who take it like, why, like, what? So I was just curious. But it's cool to hear that it was always fine though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe there's that every now and again, but there was somebody being like, like honestly, it felt like they couldn't wrap their head around the fact that you don't want to drink, or something, or you don't drink in a band or whatever it may be. But other than that, no, everybody was always cool and respectful about it.
And from what I heard, also, it wasn't just you watching The Office, right? Like, you did interviews that it was kind of a band thing. Am I wrong here? Like, I remember.
No, it was 100% a band thing. I want to say it was Nick Aish is the one that got us all hooked on The Office, and we'd had those. We had a crappy little DVD. You know, it was like one of the, I don't remember them, but it was like a DVD player with the fold up monitor on it.
Yeah,
we had that in the van.
The early car kind of things.
Correct. Yeah, the portable one. You know, we had the one box set of The Office. And that's all we had. So that was a kind of our nightly routine.
Yeah, so I guess it's just it makes sense for you too, right? You finish the show, you kind of know what the band's going to be up to. You do that, and you know, so pretty healthy though. Because I'm doing a lot of documentaries. It's not all like that. so it's cool. It's refreshing to hear that.
And I witnessed chaos. You know, like I've witnessed some pure fucking chaos on tour with all of that, and I've seen a lot of sad things happen due to substance stuff too. And I just made that decision. I was like, you know, my life's hard enough without these influences on me. Sorry, my son's yelling. So I don't know if you can hear that, but I just made that decision. Like, hey, like I wake up and I have a mission in the day, and I'm trying to grow this, you know, the band and my business and all these things. So I just wanted the clarity.
Awesome. That's how I kind of pictured it when you said I'm straight, like, because that's kind of what I do now. If I'm honest, like, I don't really drink, I don't do those things. I never feel bad about it. It just feels better. So whatever, I think the right mindset is people can do whatever they want, and you choose what, you know, suits better for you, and you do absolutely. It. That's it. So peer pressure is never the right choice to make. I think like do whatever you want to do, and so.
I think we're finding a common theme through this interview, right? Is like just stay true to yourself.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all that matters.
There you go. And watch The Office if you can. Both just
yes.
There you go.
That will help your life. Yes.
There you go.
I want to be mindful of your time, so I've got a few rapid fire questions for you. All right.
Sure.
Are you still cursed from the Zach Baggins Museum in Vegas for not saying bye to the haunted doll?
I don't think so. I think they took that one out on us. Did you hear that story? That was a good one.
That's all I heard about that snippet that I just said.
Okay, yeah. So quickly, I'll tell you this one. So I'm the huge Ghost Adventures fan. I have now a small friendship with Mr. Baggins, and he invited us out to his museum before our show in Vegas, the last one, or second to last show we played there. And we went, and we all went into this room with this haunted doll, and they made it very clear. So you have to say goodbye to this doll when you leave. And I didn't. And then as soon as we get back to the venue, chaos breaks loose. Somebody gets thrown through a window and smashed, and the venue gets shut down, all these things. And then somebody at some point yelled, "It's because you didn't say goodbye to the doll." And then people started chanting Zach Baggins, and it was just a whole thing. But I think that was the end of that. I feel pretty good ever since that.
Whoa, that's so pretty good. Wild though. Yeah, that's not common. It's wild. Wow. Okay.
If these events had happened in reverse order, maybe it would have been karma for this. Can you tell us about telling kids to climb trees for merch?
Oh, that's another wild show. We were on tour Devil Driver, and we played this. I thought it was a biker bar in the middle of the woods. Apparently, it was a nature sanctuary I don't know. I saw a biker shitting in the woods, so I thought it was a biker bar in the woods. And during the show, for some reason, there was a big tree right in the middle of where the crowd was, and I just said, first one to climb the tree gets a free shirt, and then it was like a World War Z of people climbing this tree, and then also all these people are up on the tree, and then this one guy jumps up and grabs this branch that they already had about 6 people on, and it snapped and fell down onto the crowd. That guy got knocked out and was bleeding, and it was just a bad deal. It was like one of those things where as soon as it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, shouldn't have said that. We got, man, what happened? We got kicked off the tour that night. We didn't get paid. They held on to they held that money for something.
Was there much left for the tour?
We got put back on the next day.
Okay.
But at that moment, the tour manager guy was pretty upset. Rightfully so, I guess. But yeah, so that was that one. There's a great video of that somewhere.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go dig.
I have to look. Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Wow. 2 wild stories in a row. Good questions, though. I love them.
I've got maybe one last short thing here. Let me just pull something up. I don't know if I can. Can I do this here? Yeah, I've got it up on screen here. Mark my words, within the next 2 years, everyone will know this kid's name with a picture of you with Noah of Bad Omens. What's the relationship here? What did you guys work on together? And damn, you were right.
Pretty accurate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I told you so is definitely in order for that one. So Noah and Jolly from Bad Omens, they co-wrote our last record with us. Okay. So they were, I don't even remember the name of the other band, their old band that they were in, but a deathcore band. You guys probably know, I forgot it. But they
I actually didn't know
they
about
were
this.
out of yeah, I don't remember what it's called, but then they were based out of Richmond. They had moved to LA. They were being managed by Jason Malhoit, who was the Winds of Plague manager at the time. And so he connected us, and we went down and recorded the last record at their house. They helped us put that together. And then the next thing you know, they're the biggest band in the world. So pretty amazing.
It's wild. And I just want to ask you out of curiosity. I've seen a lot of interviews with Noah, and the vibe he's giving me, he seems like an awesome person. I'm just curious to know, like, your experience, working with like the whole vibe, like, not to put you on the spot or whatever. I would be surprised if you tell me, no, it was terrible. I don't think you would have taken that picture in the first place. But no, I'm just curious, how was, the general vibe, like, working with Noah?
I mean, I can't say enough good things about them. And I remember at the time just being so blown away with just how talented they were and how effortless songwriting was for them. And just how much they loved it. Like they just could not get enough of writing and recording. And it was very, I'm not gonna lie, by that time in my career, I was pretty burnt out. And I think I mentioned earlier, I did not like writing or recording records. It wasn't my favorite thing, but with them, it was really fun and exciting, and they would get excited. And it was just a really, really great, a great process to be a part of. And, we talk still about writing more Winds of Plague material with them, which they very kindly say, oh yeah, we would love to do that, but they're busy dominating the world right now, so
yeah,
we'll see
they're the ones doing the 300 shows a year now.
Yeah, and I mean it's amazing, and like I said, from that post, like, it was just one of those things where when I was around them and saw what they were doing in their process, I'm like, these guys are gonna be huge.
It was tangible. Like you could sense it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and they were all in, right? Like Jolly had moved over from, he's gonna kill me, Finland, I think, or Sweden, one of those European countries. He had moved, he moved over.
He went across the ocean
out to California.
Yeah.
Yes, they all moved into this small little apartment together just to make it happen, make it work, and make it. So it was cool.
Yeah,
cool to see that.
I also want to, like, my mind was blown when I think I played it on stream once here, but like Noah's voice, even in an acoustic setting, is mind blowing. Like I was like, first time I heard, because I heard their, usual sound, like more with all the instrumental, but even this guy alone is just like his voice it's like a God-gifted talent. But I think it's cool that you saw that, like by working. I think it's awesome. And I think it's awesome that they like what you're doing too. So.
Yeah, it was just crazy. I'd be sit there stuck on vocal patterns or whatever, and then they would be like, "Oh, this," and they would just do it. It was so effortless for them. And if you listen very closely on our last record, that both Noah and Jolly were doing the backup vocals on that stuff as well.
That's actually cool. I'm gonna have to give it another.
I didn't know, if I'm honest.
Perspective in mind, yeah. I
really didn't know this part, and it makes it even cooler. So that's amazing. But thanks, Dom, for pulling up the picture, because like it couldn't be. I don't think it could be more accurate. The whole world, like you cannot hear about alternative or metal music without knowing this this band and this guy anymore. So super accurate.
It was right.
And I'm a little removed from the world. Obviously, I know that they're doing super well, but now I have people saying, "Oh, you're from Winds of Plague. Yeah, you worked with Noah."
You're that guy now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, which I'm happy to be that guy. So that's it was really cool to see their journey explode like that.
Yeah,
that's cool, man.
That's awesome. And as we always say, it's always good for the scene, right? Like when a band like that blow, it's good for everyone. Like it just makes, everybody, it makes a bigger, wider audience, and they play, I think, like a gateway role, like say they introduce people to heavy music and stuff. So that's just very wholesome to see. They deserve every part of it, I think.
100%.
There you go.
Man, thank you so much for doing this, man. I don't know if you've got anything that you'd like to plug or anything you've got to say to the world while we're here, but thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Once again, this was awesome. Like it's been a while since I've talked about the band and thought about the past and all that. So it was really cool to take that trip down memory lane with you guys and anybody out there that supported the band throughout the years. It means the world to me and all the other guys from the band, past and present. I don't know if Morgoth is still with us. He's there. Yeah, we're not active at the moment, but it's still something we kick around and talk about. And when we do play shows, it's just so appreciative now. It was then too, but even more now that people. No,
it's a different perspective, right? Yeah.
And just, I wouldn't have guessed 20 years later, there's people that still are coming out to our shows. So just thank everybody so much for coming out and making an old 40-year-old dad feel special.
Awesome. And we're going to have to keep in touch because obviously I need to do a part 2 video for Winds of Plague. So I'm going to, need you for the information and all that. So...
And then I'm gonna watch it and silently judge it. So
perfect. I'm gonna be terrified, but I'm gonna be happy to. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm looking forward to that for sure.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much, man. We'll keep in touch and have a great night, man. Thanks again for doing it.
Talk soon.
An honor. Thank you, man.
All right, peace out.